Cheers there, YouTube. Hope you're all doing well. I'm just drinking. Start with the housekeeping on the booze first. Some homemade berry wine that I made a couple of years ago. Very good stuff. Very good stuff. And it was unfortunate, really, that last year wasn't a very good year for soft fruits, wild fruits, simply because the start of the year was very, very wet. And what happens is when you get a very wet season during the flowering season, it means there are fewer pollinators around to pollinate the flowers, which means you don't get the fruit. So this mixed blackberry, what was in there? Blackberry, wild raspberries, bit of elderberry, I believe. Maybe some bilberry too, I'm not quite sure. Can't remember. Last year we collected hardly anything in the way of berries, certainly not enough to make wine with, which was a real shame. A real shame. But whether you like it or not, climate change is in fluctuation. So, I'm just smoking in a cob some of this stuff right here that was given to me by Wolfgang, Vogie 73, when he came to visit last year. Larson's blend number 32, Curly Flake. Really nice blend, this. Not something I'd smoke a lot of, to be honest. It's, yeah, I mean, as a regular smoke, it's a bit too sweet for me. It's kind of a Virginia with a caramel topping. Tends to burn quite hot. But it's very flavourful, and actually, you know, it's quite nice to smoke on occasion, but definitely not an everyday smoke for me. I'm just getting to the end of this bowl. But I thought I'd check in with you guys because it's been a couple of weeks since I last uploaded a video. I've been pretty busy. I have been out in the field quite a bit over the last couple of weeks, but I've actually usually had a colleague with me, so I've not been able to bring you anything interesting and exciting from the woods, unfortunately. So my apologies for that. I'll try and address that issue at some point fairly soon. But I was talking with a friend on Skype earlier on. A friend who lives in Germany. And our Skype conversations usually go on for hours, which is fantastic. We always have a lot to talk about. Always really interesting stuff. Always really, really interesting stuff. But we started talking about cultural differences between our respective European countries. And in particular, at the time, we were talking about the drinking culture and the way that we all relate to each other when we're going out and having a drink and having a good time and whatever. Now, it's true to say that here in Britain, or at least from abroad, from a lot of the world, we're seen as being a very, the caricature of us, I suppose you could say, is of the very stiff upper lip, rather kind of Victorian mentality, one could say. Eh, what? Polite, respectful, doing everything proper. In reality, of course, it's a very different story, as caricatures usually are. And it's interesting. I spent most of a lot of my years living abroad in other European countries, and particularly with relation to alcohol and drinking. Um, what's always struck me is that culturally, the British aren't very mature when it comes to dealing with alcohol. When you go to somewhere like Spain, Portugal, um, Italy, France, Germany, places where you know where people drink and things like that from an early age, um, there's a greater degree, I think, of cultural maturity towards excess and going overboard on anything. Really losing your shit, so to speak, is really quite frowned upon. Whereas over here, because we have had a very sort of proper cultural upbringing, you could say, there's certain cultural expectations of us. The impetus then, when we drink here in the UK, is to go out and get shit-faced, start fights, go mad, go crazy, wreck things. And actually, the reality is that is precisely what we do, both here in the streets of our own country, and particularly when we go abroad. And anybody who lives in the south of Spain or Portugal, the Algarve or the Costa del Sol, will know very well, unfortunately, how bad the British can be when we're abroad. But it's interesting the way that we see ourselves as a culture and the way that other cultures see us. That's my point. And it made me think about something, and this is particularly pertinent to what's going on in the world today. And this isn't a political video. I'll I'm sure my political leanings are pretty obvious to anyone, but I try and keep them out of the YouTube pub community as much as possible. However, I do feel it is important to stand up and be counted in a time of universal deceit. And what's going on today in the world put me in mind of when I was a child. I was born in Germany. I was born into a military family. And the first 10 years of my life I spent living in a foreign country, living in Germany, on a British Army barracks, going through a British Army school, born in a British military hospital. I was indoctrinated, you could say, from an early age. But about 1985, when I was 10 years old, I moved to England for the first time. And my first day, and for months and months afterwards, all the kids at the school, at the British school that I went to here in England, ribbed me and gave me a whole load of shit for having been born in Germany. And I was called a Nazi and a Kraut and various other derogatory things. Now, interestingly enough, these were all kids from army families as well. So you kind of thought that, well, you would have thought that they'd kind of been through it all themselves and they'd known better. But no, that's unfortunately not the way the world works. But yeah, in any case, so I got to this country as a 10-year-old English child, to English parents, but having been born and lived in a foreign country. And I was instantly sat upon for my difference in that regard. And when you look at what's going on in the world today, the actions of a lot of people in my country and yours are not really dissimilar to the actions of all of those 9 and 10-year-old kids who ripped the piss out of me when I first moved to this country. The difference is, of course, we're all grown up now. And actually, as is evidenced by, well, by so many of the people that we talk to and communicate with and bond with, are friends with here in this community. We're not all that different. So, those are my thoughts of the evening. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're treating your neighbours properly, whoever they may be, and wherever they may come from. You take care, folks. I'll see you soon.